Oh, he wanted to, he sat there like, oh.
Good evening, everyone. The hour being 6 p.m. on Monday, June 3rd, 2024. I'd like to call to order the City of Laconia City Council budget meeting. Before we go any further, I'm wondering if Chief Canfield would lead us in the Pledge of Allegiance.
I pledge allegiance to the flag of the United States of America and to the republic for which it stands, one nation, under God, indivisible, with liberty and justice for all.
Thank you, Chief. I'll run through the roll call, and then we can roll right into you if you like. We're joined this evening by Recording Secretary Katie Gargano. I'd ask her to please call the roll.
Counselor Cheney.
Here?
Counselor Susie.
Here.
Counselor Hoffman.
Present.
Counselor Haynes.
Here.
Counselor Felch.
Here.
Mayor Hosmer.
Here. We have a quorum in attendance right now. We have three presentations this evening from the Police Department, Public Works, and Fire Department. Our goal is to not cut anyone short at all, but let's see if we can keep it to maybe 30 minutes for each presentation as a maximum time, but certainly if something requires, we're more than happy to go longer if need be. So, leading us off right now is Department Budget Presentation from the Laconia Police Department.
Good evening, and thank you, Mr. Mayor.
Good evening.
Members of the
Turn it
council.
up if you like. Don't be bashful. We're harmless.
Captain Grayton's here with me, as well as Commissioner Davis and Commissioner Mello. Just a brief overview of 2023. There was 274 line of duty deaths in 2022 and 138 in 2023. So certainly a dangerous job the men and women of this police department do to protect our city, and we certainly keep that at the forefront of our minds when we talk about this. So 2024-25 budget highlights, what's driving the increases. We saw an increase in salaries of $226,000. Shift differential was level funded. Health insurance increased by $100,000, obviously with the cost of increase in health insurance. Dental insurance went up by $2,900, and then outside contracted services went up by $59,000. Outside contracted services provides, it's in the booklet, but a lot of that is the technology that we use. As you know, 2024 is very technological compared to when we started 20, 25, 30 years ago. Some of the challenges that we saw this past year of in 2023 and 24 budget year, certainly recruitment and retention of police officers here in Laconia. As you all are well aware, I'm not going to read verbatim on this, but certainly that was one of our biggest challenges this past year. We haven't really seen this hit in Laconia up until this past year. We have seen it probably over the last 5 years across our state and across our country, but last year it hit us pretty hard. A lot of the causes for that was the George Floyd incident that we saw, as well as the Tyree Nichols incident in Memphis, Tennessee, which caused a national political climate, the anti-police movement. Part of that was the proliferation of body cameras, the Monday morning quarterback, and the fact that, you know, not necessarily every officer wants to do this job because they're going to be critiqued on a split-second decision. Coupled with that, a strong economy, and then requirements and expectations of today's modern police officer. These requirements have changed dramatically, certainly over the course of my career and certainly over the course of the captain's career. Just to note, a 2023 PERF report, the Police Executive Research Forum, noted that this was back in 2023, officer retirements and resignations increased across the country. 65% of agencies reported an increase in retirements between 2020 and 2022. 66% reported an increase in resignations, along with a decrease in applications. Most resigning officers left for careers outside the law enforcement, which accounted for 68% of law enforcement officers leaving. Another 64% accounted for leaving to another law enforcement agency. So just looking at the state of the department currently, we have 6 patrol officer vacancies and 2 detective position officers, accounting for 8 vacancies at the moment. Another concern that is certainly on our forefront is the number of senior officers and senior command staff that are eligible for immediate retirement. Right now we have 9 supervisory personnel that are eligible, 6 officers and 2 civilians. accounting for a whole lot of experience. So those are the challenges we've seen over this past year. What have we done to try to hire police officers? We've done a lot. Certainly we have a recruitment team comprised of 5 officers. They attend job fairs all over New England. They attend written test events as well as physical agility testing as well. So the hiring process, it consists of a written test, physical abilities test, oral interview, chief's interview, a background investigation, which includes a psychological written and in-person interview with a police psychologist, a medical exam, and polygraph test. So there's a whole lot to hiring our new police officers. I won't read through this. This is in your handout, but certainly the breakdown of time that we see to recruit an officer is very significant. Upon hire of a new officer, they attend our 6-week in-house training program. They attend the New Hampshire Police Academy, which is 16 weeks, and then they go through a 12 to 14-week field training program. That is before they become a solo officer. So certainly a very significant amount of time from the date of hire to actually working as a solo officer. This is a list of recruitment fairs that we attended in 2023. As you can see, we went everywhere from Norwich University to Thomas College, Bridgewater State University, St. Anselm's, all over New England. 5 states we visited last year trying to recruit police officers. We use a police app called policeapp.com. This allows candidates to be able to submit applications, and it's a way of tracking their hire process. We advertise in the Equal Opportunity Journal to comply with some of our accreditation requirements, and also to recruit from throughout New England. Great Bay Community College, we participate in their written testing process. We use social media a lot: Facebook, Instagram, X, which is formerly Twitter, and LinkedIn to recruit. As you know, employee pay rate was significantly below market rate, which was very inhibitive to our recruitment and retention of police officers here in Laconia. It also definitely affected employee morale. As you know, on July 1st, the pay scale will be adjusted. So I thank all of you for recognizing the significance of this problem, and that this was something that needed to happen to save our good quality police officers and to recruit significant ones. So on behalf of myself, and certainly on behalf of the Police Commission, we recognize that, and we thank you for your work and effort to make that happen. 2023-24 grant funding, we've received over just over $3 million in the last 4 years in grant funding. Last year was $317,000. Part of that was $77,000 from Congressman Pappas, along with another $96,000 that we just got word of that we received from 3 years ago. Granite Shield in the amount of $45,000. Motor Vehicle Enforcement Grant, $22,000. The Cobb Grant, which is $20,000, and then we had 2 generous donations from the community in the amount of $40,000 for the development of a firearms training range. We received a $3,000 Walmart grant, that's a $14,000 Burn Jag grant. So certainly we recognize the challenges of operating in a tax cap community, and we're working hard to find all the grant funding that we can to supply the critical needs of the department. Some of the new technology that we've seen over the past year and a half, continued social media presence. We're on Facebook, Instagram, Twitter, and LinkedIn now. We have a professional presence on those social media accounts, not only for recruitment, but also to be in touch with our community and let them know what we're doing. Facebook statistics for the past year, we have 11,895 followers, reaching an audience of 21.4 followers and 78.6 of non-followers. In the past 28 days, we've reached 23,000 people. So that's the depth of what we can communicate. Over this past year, we moved to Spider technology, which I think we've talked about before. It's when someone calls the police department, they immediately get a text message acknowledging their call to the department. It also keeps them in touch if an officer's delayed for a priority call. They'll be notified of that, as well as give them follow-up in a community survey. So the community survey results I passed out as well. If you look at the overall positive results of those surveys, it's pretty overwhelming. Even when we're working with the developers of Spider Tech, they were very impressed that our completion rate for surveys was so high in compared to other agencies that they service. We're in the process of still implementing the Imprivata technology. This was a multi-factor authentication for our computer software to make it more secure. That should be hopefully up and running in the next few months. First Arrive, and this is a employee notification software that's around the building in the police station to notify them of positive messaging within the department, but also to notify them of calls, such as our detectives who don't necessarily listen to radios. They see it pop up on the screen in order to get them more involved in higher priority calls. Online crime reporting, I think this is what the city manager was alluding to earlier. We're moving to this. This is a way that citizens can report certain or low-profile crimes. If someone has a propane tank that's stolen, but they have no idea who stole it, a lot of times this stuff is not being reported to the police department, so we have no idea it's occurring in an area. And if we take one area and, we have 50 propane tank thefts and we have no idea, we can't do any proactive enforcement in that area. And a lot of people don't report that because they look and say, well, I don't know who did it. I don't want to call the police department and wait for an officer to come out and then take a report that's not going to go anywhere. It's not true. We would investigate that, and certainly if we could combine all those together, we can do a lot of proactive enforcement. So this is an online platform that would be voluntary of our residents that they could report this. We would get notified of that, and we could add those together and then take proactive enforcement to that area. So very exciting. This should also cut down on some officer time. A lot of times we go to Walmart for thefts. We go there multiple times a day for shoplifting. This is a way that their loss prevention officers can enter this directly to us, and we can get those reports and alleviate some of that on-scene reporting. I just want to talk a little bit about our assistant prosecutor update. 2 years ago, you funded an assistant prosecutor position. We were finally able to hire him last year. Nick Zazi, he came as a law clerk from the Superior Court. Very good candidate. The onboarding has taken place for the past 9 months. There's an extensive transition period from being a law clerk to a trial attorney, but he's been working with Jim Sawyer, our lead prosecutor, for that period of time. And he expects that training will last through the end of the summer. I just want to say thank you for that position. Jim was very overworked. He probably filled the shoes of 3 different prosecutors in the amount that he worked. He was a salaried position, so he would work weekends and nights just to keep his head above water. A lot of the cases weren't necessarily prepared for trial as best they could be, or maybe didn't serve the crime victims as well as they could have. So this is alleviating some of that burden. Jim is not allowed in the building on weekends anymore as a result. So it's taken a lot off of his plate, but it's also allowed them to have more time for trial prep and to more adequately serve crime victims. Highlights of annual in-service training and specialty training for employees. Last year, we saw a total of 1,349 training hours with a total of 36 in-service training hours per officer. I'm a huge believer in training is the way our officers are going to perform under stress, and without that training, that's gonna lack, and we're going to see negative results. So very important that they continue to train. Some of our department programs and community outreach that we do, the Citizen Police Academy, we'll be ramping that up this year and hopefully reach a better group of people. The last couple of years have been a little bit hard to get people together for it, but we're looking to revitalize that. CALEA National Accreditation, Victim Services Unit, the School Resource Officers, the Internet Crimes Against Children Task Force, extremely important task force that we are associated with that do a lot of work in the area of online predators. Our community service officers, National Night Out. We do a lot of community presentations. We participate in Special Olympics, Make-A-Wish, the Big Brothers Big Sisters programs, and vacant house checks. Along with the college internship program, high school internship program, the DARE program that we teach in the schools, our TIP 411 program. We do a lot of school and community tours, our cop card program, our drug collection box, our DEA drug take back program, Coffee with a Cop. We do a lot of ride-alongs, and then lastly, we work very closely with the Hewitt criminal justice class at the high school. So that's probably one of the better ways to recruit is we get in there, teach at the criminal justice class, or we get internships from colleges. They come here and work. In fact, one of them just graduated from the police academy last Friday. She worked for an intern. She did an internship with us. She worked as a community resource officer for the last 2 summers, and now she's going to be a police officer here. So it's kind of a very good recruitment tool. An update on our CALIA accreditation status. CALIA is Commission on Accreditation for Law Enforcement Agencies. It's comprised of 21 commissioners, the full spectrum of public safety leadership, including judges and lawyers and prosecutors from all gamuts. Is by far the premier credentialing association for police agencies across the country and actually internationally. It's 483 standards. Just to give you some perspective, approximately 1,000 agencies out of 17,000 police agencies across the country are CALIA accredited. So it's not that many. Here in New Hampshire, 15 police agencies are accredited out of over 200 law enforcement agencies in New Hampshire. The assessment process, it's an extensive ongoing self-assessment comprised of annual remote compliance service review, a quadrennial site-based review, and then a quadrennial review for the commission for a final review. So last year was year 3 of our accreditation cycle. They reviewed 213 different standards, and they verified that we were in compliance with our standards for last year. So that brings us to this year, 2024. This is year 4 of our accreditation cycle. So we'll be looking to undergo a full reaccreditation, which is comprised of a full site-based review, which will be August 5th through the 8th. They'll send several assessors out who will basically stay at the police station for those days and do comprehensive reviews of personnel, whether it be use of force or community involvement or whatnot, and then they'll talk to community members as well. And then in November, they'll be looking for possible testimony and hopefully acceptance of reaccreditation at that point for another 4-year process. That's all I have, unless there's any questions.
17 minutes, that's high speed. Actually, less than 17 minutes because
You scared me, Mayor. You said 30 minutes.
I'll look to counselors to start right now. Do you have any questions? Okay.
I might ask one, Mr. Mayor, if I may. Chief, you commented on the proposed pay increases, and I wondered if you could tell the council the reaction in the ranks.
Well, I can tell you, there were 2, possibly 3 officers that were essentially looking for other jobs. One was pretty well on the verge of being there, and then 2 others. When this news broke, it was monumental. I went downstairs, and just the feeling and the lift to morale was incredible. You could feel it. So it was very significant. And I haven't heard anyone talking about leaving since then. So certainly very much appreciated by all.
Thank you, Mr. Mayor.
Could you bring up the slides again? Can you go back over your personnel? Is it, those are.
To this one?
Exactly, yeah. Okay, so right now, you have 8 active vacancies, right? Yes. 45 sworn, 37 current. One question I had, and you had 2 detective vacancies.
Yeah,
is
so
that right?
we're down 6 patrol officers, 2
Yep.
detectives. That brings us to the complement that we had, which was 45. We actually should be at 49, though, because
Okay.
we had additional grant positions that were never filled because we couldn't fill those at the time.
Okay, so I would expect that your detectives are internal promotions. They're not lateral hires from outside the department, right?
Correct.
Okay, so before you move someone up from uniform, you really have someone to backfill the uniform position before you push someone to a detective position.
Correct.
Okay, that makes perfect sense to me, but really your ideal number right now would be 49 officers?
That is correct.
Okay. Going to the amount of money you receive in grants. It was a pretty significant sum. Oops, there you go, right there, 370. And do you have a dedicated grant writer within the department?
We actually contracted with, some of the federal grants are very difficult to navigate around. We contracted with I would say, very part-time grant writer that helps us assist that. Between the captain and one of our lieutenants, they manage the grants and do all the grant management, but we do have a grant writer that assists us with the technical writing of those grants.
So I guess I'd look to both of you, the captain as well. I would suspect the return on investment for the part-time grant writer is pretty significant, right? What it costs you and what you're getting.
Absolutely huge, yeah.
Would it make any sense for us as the council to work with you to find more money to make that person work more hours and get more money? Does it work that way or not?
Yes and no. I mean, we haven't really limited her to a specific number. We kind of see the grants that are on the radar and then throw them her way. So her hours do
got it.
ebb and flow.
Depending on where
if
you
you're-
are in the process of applying for a grant, right?
Yeah, I mean, in reality, if we spend $1,500 on her to write a grant and we get $100,000, I mean, those are the numbers that we're talking.
Yeah, sure. I mean, that's right. Yeah. You're $98,000 ahead of the game at that point.
Right.
Yeah.
Yep.
Okay, so just wondering, it seems to be such a great opportunity. Just wondering if there's more out there that you, but just a question you don't have to answer, just a thought I had as I was looking
Yeah,
at
we
it.
can certainly look into that and maybe pose that question to her. She's very well known in the grant writing world, and has a lot of contacts in that. I think that's what makes her so successful, is
Yeah.
that she has those contacts and knows. I mean, as you know, writing federal grants, it's got to be the certain language in the way it's written to meet the objective, and she knows how to do that. So we can pose that question to her and kind of feel that out.
It's an art, I mean, certainly, and it's a real skill that you have to have. So, I mean, any opportunity to find more money out there that makes sense to you, but just a thought I had, not asking you to do anything necessarily. One question. You said CALIA reassessment is this year between August 5th and 8th, right?
Correct.
So will they be here physically?
They will.
They will, okay. I think that's great. I mean, quite frankly, 17 police forces out of 200 police forces in the state. I mean, you're the top 7.5% of police forces in the state. You know, they're only, I guess my point is they're only doing 7.5% are CALIA qualified. I think that's pretty darn impressive, quite frankly.
Yeah, and you know, it's, as a real government agency, you know, they have these standards, with almost 500 standards, and it's a lot of work to meet those standards. But on the other hand, you have the liability protection on the other end, because if you have those standards in place and you're meeting those standards, whether it's training standards or any of the other standards that you have, the liability reduction and the better police officers you have, the better police service you're delivering. And quite honestly, some of the issues we see across the country, whether it's Minneapolis, whether it's Memphis, Tennessee, whether it's here in New Hampshire, probably would have been avoided had they had those training standards. You look at policing across the country, it's pretty amazing when you talk to people from organizations like other chiefs from the International Chiefs Police Association, and they don't have standards for police qualification with the firearms. You know, to me, that blows my mind. How do you put a certified police officer on the street, you know, doing 1 hour of firearm training a year? It just doesn't make sense.
Right.
You know, yes, it costs money to do the training, but it makes no sense because you're not equipping them with the tools that they need to do it.
Anyone else around here CALIA certified?
Portsmouth just became CALIA accredited. Manchester is. Nashua was the first in the state. Claremont.
Okay, but nobody,
UNH.
nobody in this sort of Belknap County area,
No one else in Belknap County is.
really? Okay, that's remarkable. One question I have, and this is out of left field, and you can just take it and get back to us when you want. You know, the issue, and I'm sure you all encounter this all the time, but the issue of people you're coming in contact with who have serious mental health issues and how you respond to that. A few years ago, it was de-escalation tactics that became critically important, and I think when you look at least years ago, when you look at some of the numbers of how well de-escalation has worked in some departments, as far as limiting the use of force on people you're coming in contact, can you talk about sort of how you respond to this and what you've done to sort of adapt to encountering more people with mental illness on the streets that you have to have contact with, and we know that can be a really, quite frankly, from a civilian's perspective, kind of a scary experience, I'm sure, for officers, and how you respond to that.
Well, I think it is all about training and exposing your officers to those, that how someone is suffering mental illness, and that everything, a threat posed by someone with mental illness, depending on how it's handled, can be handled in two separate ways. And the way you overcome that is with the training. PERF, the Police Executive Research Forum, came out with a program called ICAT a few years ago. It's Integrating Communications and Tactics, basically slowing down, talking, communicating, assessing the situation, and de-escalating it instead of reverting to use of force immediately. And you see those without the same training react to it much differently, and it's a very quick use of force. We have many uses of force, or possible uses of force here in Laconia, where we could possibly use deadly force. We haven't yet, and I'm not saying it's not possible in the right situation, but certainly every year we have a number of those altercations. Had it been handled by other agencies, it's very possible, and I can tell you there's places in this county that have done that. So it is all about the training, and it's all about the ICAT and in assessing the situation and de-escalating it. A vast majority of the people we come into contact with have some sort of mental illness that they're suffering from, and they might not be in their right mind. And it is slowing down, assessing the situation, knowing how to talk to them, knowing how to de-escalate. We don't always have to rush to make an arrest or rush to take them into custody. As long as they're safe at the moment, we can talk to them, we can de-escalate it, and maybe get that compliance.
So, thank you, Chief. And this is, I think, similar to what the question I just asked is first of all, I want to extend my appreciation to you in the department and your willingness to get officers involved with some of the work that's going on, whether it be within the recovery community, whether it be in the mental health community, whether it be in the housing task force that's trying to do some work. The fact that you have people that have the ability to come and work with us, so we all as civilians get a better understanding of the work that you're doing in the community. But I also, that's great, and I think it just opens up avenues of communication and relationship building from your department with people who are working in the community and really working for similar goals, whether it's community safety or whether it's just trying to better understand the people that you have contact with that are our friends and neighbors out in the streets. You've always been very, and I say this, a small p progressive in looking for ways to fulfill a role in this community that's desperately needed. So I've always greatly appreciated that with you and your force, and I will say, and I don't think anyone up here feels any differently. If they do, I'm not aware of it. Really how proud we are in this city to have the police force that we have, and how you conduct your affairs in this city. It's a real source of pride for me personally, and I think we're very fortunate to have the men and women Laconia Police Department doing the work that you do, and I think the community understands that as well. So.
Well, thank you. I mean, certainly we are part of the community, and these problems can't be solved by one means only, right? It takes everyone to bring that together, and that's why we so much integrate ourselves into the community, because we are part of the community, and we need the community's help. So that is what true community policing is about. On that note, I'm happy to let you know that the COSAP grant that Detective Eric Adams has been working on for the last 3 years, doing the PET program, the Prevention, Enforcement, and Treatment, that is going to be renewed for another 3 years. So great news, and they want to bring that program even further throughout the state, so.
Well, thank you, and certainly as an opportunity, I've had an opportunity to go out throughout the state a lot over the years, and your department has a reputation that others are, I'm not gonna say jealous or envious of, but we have a very good reputation here. Starts at the top, certainly with the chief and with you, Captain, and the work that you're doing, so your reputation precedes yourselves around the state.
The de-escalation part of that grant money, that $3 million, there was $200,000 in there. We wrote a grant for de-escalation. So we've put all of our officers through de-escalation, and then we also offered it regionally. We had 4 classes this spring where anybody from New England could come for free for that de-escalation program.
That's awesome. Thank you very much. That's great. Councilor Susie, you had your hand up there when I started
all right, no.
getting carried away.
Mr. Mayor, if I could just
Please do.
want to add something. In your budget book, page 5 and 6 is the list of grants. They're anticipated grants. So what you'll notice on there is we've changed the formatting of it, so it doesn't just say, here's the name of the grant. We have no idea what that really means, and then a total dollar figure. You actually will see it broken down by if we're spending salaries and benefits, overtime, all that. So as we're going through this budget process time, if you see something listed in there, we wanted to make sure it was mentioned during their budget presentation, so it's publicly noticed that we're talking about grants. So wanted you to make sure that you saw that in your budget books.
Councilor Susie had a question, maybe?
Chief, one question. I'm looking at the capital outlay and the capital requests that you made,
Yes.
and one of them that caught my eye, CAD system.
Yes.
CAD/ARPA. To me, CAD is totally different than what you mean.
Right.
Okay.
So it's computer-aided dispatch, and it's a
Right.
record management system. The system we have in place is 25, 26 years old. 28 years old. It's no longer being serviced, so they discontinue any updates, that kind of thing. So we need to change over our records management system, recognizing it's a very big lift, not only cost-wise, but that is a record keeping that we've had for the last 28 years here in Laconia. So to change over that system's huge. We put it in there because we know we're gonna have to change to it over the next few years,
That's something that's grant eligible.
hopefully. Yep,
Thank you.
absolutely.
Mr. Mayor, one more comment on that. When you talked about the grants and we had that, he's got a lady, or somebody who's familiar with that, that's something we should look at for the city entirely. Because that's one of my biggest concerns. I talked to the Water Commission to look at some of the grants that might be available through certain federal agencies. And we're just not experienced enough in those areas. So, thank you.
Thanks, Councilor Susie. If no other questions, Chief, Captain, thank you very much.
Thank
for
you
your
very much.
presentation. It's great to see you both.
Thank you.
Commissioners, thanks for coming. Next up, we have Wes Anderson with Department Budget Presentation from the Department of Public Works. Welcome, Wes.
Just gotta do a swap over here.
Yep, should be good.
Excuse me.
Thank you for meeting with me tonight. What you'll see here, for those who've been on the council for a while, it's the same format with just updated information. So we'll proceed. And please stop me on the slides so we don't have to go back if you have questions. All right. There we go. Okay, so that's the agenda for tonight. As it sits, the planning guidance that I got for the year was no more than 3% budget, compared to last year. That was the increase, and no additional personnel. So you'll see that as we go through. I'll also talk about inflation and the other costs that we're seeing in regards to the construction side of the house. Personnel, that's the biggest issue that we've got right now internally to the department. Short for my driver laborers. We have been able to hire mechanics, some driver laborers, and filled in the sanitary sewer positions. As it sits right now, the main problem that we had was we weren't competitive with the proposed increases for the next fiscal year. We're getting closer, but we're not there. You can see is for our labor without a CDL, we're going up to $20.20 an hour starting. That puts us comparison to where Busby Construction is paying for a labor without much experience. The labor with CDL in the upcoming fiscal year is $21.05. I'm not even going to consider that one. Doesn't even get us close. So the next one is driver with CDL. That puts us in the $21.81 range to start with. That's still too low. The contracts, the advertisement you see up there talking with the contractors, for them to get a person with some CDL experience driving, they're paying in the mid to the high 20s right now. So that may be more attractive depending upon what the packages are out there, but it may not get us where we need to be. If you've seen the ads for GMI out there, they've been offering $30 to $35 an hour per experience. Both Casella and Waste Management have pretty high hiring bonuses for people with commercial driver's licenses. So that's also what we're in competition with. Comparing us to other public agencies, just looking at the past winter, NHDOT was advertising a $5,000 hiring bonus to get them through the winter. Concord, to make them competitive, because a lot of their truck drivers are based out of Concord, they did a $300 per week stipend from December 1st to March 31st that put them in the $5,100 range. Ashland did a $200 per week stipend for being on call and ready to plow. And then Guilford, about a full year ago, over a 2-year period, they did a $5 an hour increase in their department's employees. Okay, so where are we right now? The one benefit that we do have is we're picking up the cost of getting their commercial driver's license. It's costing us about $5,500 an individual who comes in to get them trained. Salaries is better, but I'll be honest, we're still having people who have the CDLs coming to me say, you're not even close, and we're not interested in an interview. I've gotten to the point right now with an interview, I'm saying this is what I can offer early to see if it's even worth discussing it and bringing them in. Vacation, a couple of the individuals said was too low, you know, what we were offering, and wouldn't consider that. Had a couple said, you know, they wanted consistent hours. They didn't want to be subject to the winter storm when we're working for however long it happens to be. And then you just got to remember the age impact. So what we're really is what our type of work does to an employee's bodies, that affects both who I have on staff and then who is looking to be hired. And then it doesn't help with the condition of the public works structure.
Okay, I hate to interrupt, but I'm very concerned about this.
Yes.
And I think it needs a little deeper dive. Going back a couple of slides under other public agencies.
Yes.
Are you saying to me that DOT is offering, okay, a $5,000 bonus, I get it. Concord has a 300-week stipend.
Right.
They give that to whom?
They're CDL drivers, the people who plow.
So whether they're used or not, if it's a light winter, they're still getting an additional $300 per week
Correct.
to at least be available to drive the truck.
Yes.
The plow truck. Ashland, not too far away, is doing a 200-week stipend for being on call and ready to plow.
Correct.
And so what we're seeing, and then Guilford is going up. So what we're seeing here is we're short employees because we are not where we need to be on compensation.
Correct.
So I think we have tried to address this a bit. So we're going to be passing a budget here soon, but what you're going to be allocated for salaries and wages, you're just going to remain short because you're not competitive.
Highly likely, probably.
So what is it you need from the city in order to staff all of these positions?
If we want to hire CDL drivers, we gotta be someplace in the area of $25 an hour or more. And then we gotta start thinking about what we're doing to attract people in regards to winter plowing.
Well, let's go back to just full-time help.
Right.
As we all know, the trades in the construction industry, and I suspect Busby, times are good because there's a fair amount of money out there that's flowing around the economy, particularly for infrastructure work.
Correct.
But we all know that this is cyclical. When that money dries up, these people get laid off.
Mm-hmm.
Our distinct advantage here is, if I'm not mistaken, and correct me if I'm wrong, odds are we don't lay people off in the city
Correct.
because we lack the work. We have a pretty good benefits program that stays in place. They
Yep.
don't have to worry about it because they're not going to get laid off. And they also become part of a state retirement system, is that correct?
Correct.
But Busby and GMI, I bet they don't have something like the state retirement system.
Correct.
So the idea of being at least competitive on an hourly wage is one thing, but it seems to me our advantage is we don't lay off, we have state retirement, and our benefits package therefore stays in place for a longer period of time.
But if you're talking about a 20 to 22-year-old, all they're really caring about is how much money they're getting. When I talk to someone who is in the 40s or 50s, who have a lot of benefits and a lot of salary, they say, I'm not coming to work for less than I'm earning now. So that's the problem I'm facing.
So it would just seem to me that it's up to the council to make that determination on finances, and you need to submit something to this council that says, this is what I need per hour, and this impacts the budget in such a way so I remain competitive and fully staffed. Because I think one of the frustrations sitting here over the years is to people say, well, our sidewalks aren't plowed, our potholes aren't filled, we're not and for you to come and say to us, well, I don't have the people, so it's a foregone conclusion. Well, I think at this point in the budget process, it's give us a budget that says, if you fund this at my request, I will deliver all the people, so we won't have to worry about potholes and sidewalks and some of the stuff that we're just not getting to because we're not staffed. That's my 2 cents and kind of my gripe on this right now. Ultimately, you gotta tell us what you need. We may say no, the council may say no to what your request is, but we also then realize that when it comes to frustrations about things not getting done or prioritized the way we'd like them prioritized, we made that decision that we would be in this position when we approved the budget.
Okay, this is the exact same slide that I showed back in the early in this year when we were talking strictly about what to do for personnel. The only change I've done to this is I've changed the amount of pay for what has been approved. I have not changed a thing here. So if we want to get to that point, we're gonna have to start putting us in what our competition is.
Absolutely, absolutely. And that's sort of our obligation to look at this and make a determination what it is we can afford. And the cost-benefit analysis for all of us sitting here is that saying this is what we can afford, and we're going to give up some things on the production end of the DPW. But we need to know that going in, and not find ourselves in a situation saying, we're not getting this work done in the city, we're hearing from constituents, and what we hear from the DPW director is, that I don't have the people.
Right.
Or I can't get to the work. That quite often comes as we get gobsmacked sitting up here. And I just want to say, shouldn't we think about this earlier on in the process and allow the council to make the determination? What do you need to get the job done? It's my 2 cents, Counselor Felch, if you,
Yeah, to add to that, we want to see what we compare to the other towns and cities around us. we should be comparative to them and competing with them. Because that's where they're gonna go if they don't come to us.
Yeah, and look, the public sector is greatly different than the private sector. But if we're not, if my experience in the private sector is if we are not competing with our chief competitors and we're falling short, we're essentially going out of business. Therefore, what type of investment must we make in order to remain competitive and to deliver people some value? And I see that in the public sector. People are paying taxes. They want certain things, and they deserve certain things. We're the ones that have to sort of balance those equities as we build the budget. So, give us the news that we don't really relish. We need more money to spend on people,
I can,
just so we understand it.
Yep.
I'm sorry, Counselor Susie.
I'm almost saying-
Oh, I'm Counselor Cheney.
I just,
You usually know me.
my comment would be, in fairness to the director, the sort of folks who are willing to go out and plow snow at 4 o'clock in the morning are not 45 or 50-year-olds. They're younger people. When I was a young street cop, I never asked anybody what the retirement system was. Probably been on the job 10 years before it even occurred to me there was one. I suspect the same is true with the young folks that work for Public Works. They don't care about retirement. You know, they're gonna live forever. So pay, I guess the point I'm trying to make is, in fairness to them, pay is the critical issue.
Sure, I was thinking nice starting wage
Yep.
is what gets someone through the door.
Right.
At that point, now it's up to the director or a chief to create an environment where there's good morale and people, and the employees see value in staying there.
Well, and also, once you get them in the door, the benefits you were talking about, we can sell that.
right.
Yeah,
But first, we have to get them in the door, and if they won't even look, because they can make $30 an hour working for one of these outfits, and you're absolutely right. A year from now, these outfits will be saying, best we can do is $25 an hour or $20 an hour, because there's no work.
sure. So I guess my point is, what do we need on the hourly wage to be competitive so we get good employees? Second of all, once we get them, how do we make that 25-year-old kid begin to appreciate healthcare is important, retirement's important, good working conditions, and the fact that you don't usually get laid off.
I would also tell you, an effort on the part of our HR department to get that information out, not just to highway, but to police and fire and Parks and Rec and everywhere else. And I think the young lady who's in there is more than capable of doing that. And I guess, Mr. Mayor, I'm supporting you in the idea that we should see what the director thinks he needs, and we deserve a chance to work on that.
Yes, I mean, I hate to liken too much to the state budget process, because that can be frustrating. But commissioners come in and tell you what they need, what they really think
Yep.
they need, and then it's up to those elected to make the decision, how much can we give you to be fair to taxpayers?
Yep.
Yes, Kirk,
No, I was just
try to
gonna.
take this off the rails.
No, I was just gonna make the comment that as, you know, it was brought up about how the competitive works out. As we've been working, because his department is represented by two separate unions, and they weave in together some ways, and some ways they're completely separate. Now, when we worked with them, one of them in particular, but both of them to a certain extent, the compensation related to similar-sized communities was discussed during that. So it isn't, it wasn't just thrown by the wayside, that actually was worked on, and we, understand that is a big piece of this. We do what we can with the private industry, because that's a whole different ballgame, but a lot of those discussions did take place during the time that I was working with the two unions.
Yeah, we saw it with the police department too, when they talked about the number of people who left departments to go into a different line of work. And we know that it's not all about the money, but people will, so I guess that's the impact of the private sector and what it does have on the public sector, right? There are options out there for men and women who work for our city right now to leave, and we just need to be aware of it. Wes, I blew up your presentation there, and I apologize, but Mark, did you have anything?
Yeah, I'd just like to add something. Councilor Cheney, you hit the nail on the head when you said about human resources. Kurt and I had that conversation, okay? I think she's doing a great job. I think that we could go a little bit further in the sense that we need to come out of, you know, here's the application, yada, 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 yada. What can we do to entice people to work for this city? I understand Councilor Felch. I don't want to be competitive. I want someone to want to come to work for the city of Laconia, okay? If you've ever plowed snow, it's no picnic.
No.
And I go back to last winter, and I said to Wes, I said, what kind of a lounge do we have for these guys when they come in and they just want to sit and relax for a minute, knowing they got to come back out? And Wes's comment was, well, we have something, but it's kind of makeshift. No, you know, we got to do better. I mean, our public works people are just as important as our police and fire. And it takes all the agencies together to make this city work. And so I think we got a lot of work to do.
Well, if I might just, when I mention HR, I hope going forward, they'll be more aggressive in going out half an hour, in the different departments to give them a list of their benefits and, to do the things to keep them once we get them.
You know, one of the things I mentioned to Wes this winter was, did anybody ever think of, a $5 gift card to the guy that's plowing snow and say, hey, get a coffee on us at Dunkin' Donuts? And he said, we've done something similar to that. That's what I'm talking about, the incentive that, this is a great place to work.
If I could just make one comment. No, in a good thing. They're good comments. I think that we've had these conversations. Certainly our human resources director has had these conversations, and we've been able to handle a lot of the smaller things that seemingly smaller, but they're not small. They're big in the grand scheme of it, and it's been a nice change. As far as the benefits go, one comment I just want to make on that is we were talking about changes to the wage plans that you guys have been seeing, and you'll continue to see a few more. The conversation has come out of, we know, I don't want to say there's a limited amount of money, but we know that we're trying to be, handle a lot of wage changes, but be fiscally responsible at the same time. So how do we look at wages and benefits? And the one thing that we kept getting was, we got negotiations coming up, starting in the fall. There's some great ideas on the table for benefits changes, but every one of them would tell me the same thing: we got to fix wages now, and that's what we tried to make our focus on. But I would agree with you, Councilor Haynes. We've opened up that whole realm of what do you think about benefits? Because I want to hear what they had to say, because stuff that I hadn't thought of. So that's it is we'll call it a multi-tiered approach to trying to get this up to where we need to be. With your support, we've been able to already do a lot, and there's more coming.
Thank you.
Where'd we leave off, Wes?
Okay,
Thank you for coming.
okay. So this is really all the budget lines that are over $100,000. Okay. You can see the salaries increased by $315,000. That represents the 3% COLA that everyone's getting, not the 5%. And you'll see some discussion as we get further on the brief where that's coming about. Winter maintenance, we'll talk more about later. It's $30,000 less. Not really an issue if we have a robust winter maintenance reserve. And you'll see what we think's coming up in regards to weather patterns. And there's just some minor changes on the rest. Okay, so as it looks right now, we're coming out of an El Nino year. Really started coming out of it in the November timeframe. It wasn't a severe El Nino. All the weather climatologist guys are saying we're in the process of going to La Nina year, which means we usually are cooler than normal, and it causes stormier than average conditions. So as long as we have a robust winter reserve, we should still be fine.
What's our winter reserve right now?
Around 170,000.
Okay.
Yep. We do not know yet what our salt price will be for the upcoming winter. I'm assuming it'll probably be the same as what we experienced this past winter, someplace around $3 a ton increase. For most of it, the other changes that's really been consistent in regards to, we didn't do any increases, really decreases on it. I do want to point out that of the 3 landfills that we have, we've got 2 that are capped. We got 1, the old Moran Road landfill, that's not capped and that's planning in progress, and you'll see that being discussed in the CIP. For the private roads, right now, we have 2 that are 1 person away from giving us all the necessary easements from, not this February, but last February. They're still, the block captains are still trying to get all of it completed. We got 1 more in the process of getting couple more changes done, and that'll be going out. That's Lucerne Avenue. And we're waiting to see what happens with Hillcrest at this point. And once we get those out, then we'll go on to the next batch of roads. Okay, changing over to the solid waste standpoint, just a reminder, you've seen this before. The collection contract is set for a $4 fuel price, so if it goes over $4, we pay additional to Casella for that. And then their CPI that they use in their increase is not our CPI, it is the CPI for garbage and trash collection, and they're guaranteed a minimum of 5% annual increase. On the recycling side, again, as a reminder, it's a commodity market. You'll see the slide coming up showing how it varies. And on the transfer station side, Waste Management has the agreement with us, and that takes care of the trash hauling for the household trash, as well as it covers all costs for recycling, construction, and demolition debris. And it's based off the regular CPI with a fuel adjustment. The Waste Management side, as regards to taking it to the tipping fee at Rochester, that is a fixed price for the full year. So on the 1st of January, we go to 9103. So tonnage-wise, this is what we have did the past year. Right now, based off of what we're seeing trend-wise, we're going to be someplace around 14,000 tons of household trash and about 1,000 tons of recycling. Remember when 2023 we converted over in May from being manual to automated collection, and we have seen an increase in recycling. So I would expect a corresponding decrease in trash, but we'll see how it happens because we're getting into some of our large months in regards to trash collection. For construction and demolition debris, we are one of the lower priced in the area. So you can see what we did just over 4,000 tons. Based off what I'm seeing so far this fiscal year, we could probably end the fiscal year at about 6,000 tons of construction and demolition debris. You can see the 2 brownish sort of charts. In fiscal year 21, fiscal year 22, that's when they had the death of the manager for waste management up at the transfer station. They had a new waste management manager come in, and he changed some things and didn't tell us, and it didn't get into the billing system. So we actually made more profit that year because waste management didn't bill us for all of the construction and demolition debris that came in. This is the approved disposal fees for the upcoming year. It was approved earlier in the year. And so there'll be, a lot of the changes will be implemented in the 1st of July. And this is the recycling. So what you see here is what we pay per month to Casella for recycling. So the way it works is there's a certain set fee that we pay, and then whatever the value of the commodity is, it's deducted from that. So during the time frame of COVID, and when they needed all the recycling products they could get to make boxes and everything else, the value went up, and so our fees went down. As we were coming out of COVID, the value of the recycling product dropped, and our fees went up, and it has come across and sort of stabilized at about the $106 a ton level. So we'll see how that manages and if that stabilizes for the rest of the year or not. Swapping over the capital improvement program. So USA Today had a big article on May 16th in regards to construction industry in the United States. From 2021 to 2023, there was a 37% increase in the cost of construction, both materials and labor-wise. Costs have largely stabilized. Some prices have come down, but that's mainly in the wood products. All the other pieces have been they're still increasing, but they're more in line with the cost of inflation. Interesting enough, they had a section on the impact on developers. Construction loans are now at 10% versus 5% in 2021, and they're finding a lot of developers that are stopping their proposals in the planning process because it no longer makes economic sense for them. Okay, so on the capital improvement side, for basically, we're keeping the same things that we always do. We do our soil testing, compaction testing. We have a project inspector on site. Pavement management program is what is our Bible in regards to keeping track of what the conditions of the roads and what we want to do the next year. And then we've already had one, I'll say, working session with the Public Works Committee in regards to a 10-year plan, and you'll see more about it when we talk. And we want to keep that in that process. Okay, so for this fiscal year, we think we're going to be around 12 miles of roads serviced. Some of the reclaim and overlay may get shifted over to next year, talking about Appleton and a portion of Old North Main. It all depends upon when the design's done and whatever. The largest majority, of course, goes to crack sealing, which pays dividends in the long run. It only costs us $50,000, but we get all the weather, we get those roads weather tight again, so the water doesn't get in and cause more problems for us. Okay, so why do we need a 10-year plan? What we want to come up with in state-wise is a funded executable plan for significant projects. That doesn't necessarily mean you approve it right then, but the council agrees to these are the ones that we want to fund when. What does that do for us? One, it tells us when to apply for federal grants. So the federal grants aren't driving our train, we're driving the train and when we're trying to get them into the system. It identifies what funding is available for other roads, and it tells us for those roads, those significant roads that are further out, what we got to do in the interim until we can get to that point when we're doing the major work on them. So what we know right now in regards to the 10-year plan and other federal funding, we've got the 3 bridges coming up starting this year for the next 3 years. Elm Street is in the 10-year plan at DOT level for 2029, but it looks like they're going to agree that they've got the money available to us for 2028. Our object is to get to that, but we've got a lot of real estate issues that we've got to work through, easements and such. Union Ave, Main to Guilford is in the draft 10-year plan for 2034. And then the other ones that we have, downtown pedestrian bridge, that was congressionally directed spending. We just got the email saying they're going to send us the instructions and everything on how to begin that process. And the Hilliard Road culvert crossing, everything from that standpoint looks like it's going to be approved. But one of the issues that we have is we have to have an updated hazard plan. That hasn't been updated, so FEMA hasn't told us that we've been awarded yet. So I suspect that's got to be done first.
Have we reached out to, I mean, what type of pressure have we put on FEMA to get their act in order so that we can
Actually,
make,
it's, I hate to point fingers, but it's the fire department, it's a local plan.
it's always the fire department's
Yeah.
fault, isn't it? Yeah. Brilliant move, Wes, turn around and point another chief. Okay, that's good, we'll cover it then.
So we've got all the things that we had to do. We put the notice in the paper that, you know, the environmental aspects and everything. But I suspect until that gets further along, we may not actually get the official award.
Okay.
Yep.
I hate to see those folks, and I know Councilor Cheney would as well.
Yep.
We know they could get sort of, they lose that culvert, they lose that bridge, they're stuck there.
Yeah.
You know, which is bad for emergency personnel, but it's also bad for the people there that live there and paying taxes. And
We
this has
still-
been an ongoing concern for a number of years as we've paid a visit there, and at least once, maybe
In a
twice.
dire emergency with a little bit of work, we can get them in from Parade Road. Because that is a public right-of-way from Parade Road by pedal pushers all the way to where it intersects with Hilliard, but it's a Class 6. We don't maintain it. It's just basically,
Yeah, I don't wanna put fire trucks down that, right?
I wouldn't, but
No,
we could
so,
get,
I mean, we gotta take care of the right way to get in there.
okay, so,
Something you wanted to add there?
Well, I was just gonna say, having run emergency management for New Hampshire for 5 years, I can tell you the process is more important than the outcome or anything else to the feds. They want every I dotted and every T crossed, and I defend him in saying you can submit an almost perfect application, and by the time it gets to Washington and back, they found 3 periods that are missing and a comma needed in the second sentence on page 48. Sorry.
No, I understand that, and so one thing I think we should be willing, I'm not saying it's necessary in this case, but to make sure that our federal delegation knows that if we've got
Absolutely.
something hung up in the pipeline, that we think it's more form over substance.
Yep.
Let's
It
take
has-
advantage of that.
It has impact.
Yeah, so we should reach out to them to let
Yep.
them know that, anyway.
And I think that Hilliard Road thing is something that is very serious
Okay.
and should be fixed
All right.
sooner rather than later.
Then maybe we coordinate efforts with the city manager and the chiefs and everything we need to get this done and not let it languish. Go right
Okay.
ahead.
So on the capital improvement side, right now, programmed is 1.75 million in the budget book. The city manager told me, don't only expect to use 1.25 million of that, because the other 500,000 roughly is being used for other critical functions in the city. He can explain more what he's doing with that, but we're right now just planning on 1.25.
Okay.
The rest, you can see sidewalk is what we have to do if you, I don't know if I'll remember, but if we pave, we have to bring the sidewalk up to ADA standards as a minimum. That is all the detector plates. So that's for the most part where all that money gets used. It doesn't really get used to do sidewalks itself unless we've paved it. Annual bridge maintenance, that's not like what we do with Messer and Church. This is more of washing the decks, washing the metal underneath it. You know, the stuff that you need to do annually to try to keep it going. Drainage is self-explanatory. Parking garage is zero, assuming the sale is complete. If the sale doesn't complete, we really need to be considering, do we need to do another safety inspection in the fall timeframe to get ready for winter?
So we've allocated no money in this budget
Correct.
for, okay?
Okay. Let's see, what else in this? Moore Road landfill, it doesn't show in your budget book, but Des has basically said is we want to see continued progress on that remediation to get that landfill taken care of. So the next step on it is really all these test wells that we've got to do to get the design ready to go to it. So that 75,000 is the next step, which is the wells that we have to install, the monitoring that we have to do to then build the design package for the remediation. The crosswalk pedestrian signal, that's that one system a year that we put in. We just installed the one on North Main at Tremont. That's the rapid flashing beacons, the crosswalk. We put one by Dewey Street on Guilford. There's one on, well, Beacon Street West. There's one on Union by Canton's. That's the rapid flashing beacon. That's what we're talking about.
There's one on
here.
Elm Street, did you say that?
Yep.
Yeah, okay.
Elm Street, we really will be doing those as part of the TAP program. The crosswalks going up to the school will get rapid flashing beacons.
I think the one on Elm Street came out quite nice, quite
Yes.
frankly, and is desperately
And that was
needed.
paid for by the country club,
Oh, that was nice of them.
because it only services their operation.
Serves them right.
Okay, so, and then, whoops, hit the wrong one.
While he's looking, can I just ask, I know I'm demonstrating my ignorance, which
there
everybody
with you,
knows
man.
anyways. What is a transportation alternative program?
It is a federal program that really is designed to improve transportation for bikes, pedestrians, horses. It's not designed to support cars. So what we're doing for that is that's the improvements to the sidewalk on one side and converting the other side to be a multi-use trail. In other words, making it wider. It'll allow us to do little things like put granite curb in, because you may need that to protect the sidewalk pedestrians. But it's not really designed to do a road project.
Thank you.
No problem. Did you perk up when you heard horses?
Slightly,
So we've
in
got
case my wife is watching.
the first half of our share for the Langley Cove Bridge replacement is in this year. We'll need the rest next year. And the Mechanic Street retaining wall, for those that we're talking about, you're coming down mechanic, you go right past Manchester, you start that steep incline. Well, the wall, first two layers of rocks are really starting to pump out, and we don't want them to fall out and go towards the house. So that's, we're not replacing it, we're just fixing those two top layers. Okay, on the ADA side, we've got 4 traffic signals that meet ADA standards right now. Main and Court, Main Church, Union Elm, and Union Messer. So we've got 2 that are not really programmed yet. That's Main and Oak and Beacon Street and Church. And the other 2 we're planning to do it as part of the 2034 Union Ave project, Main to Guilford. And just to give you an order of magnitude, each one of those 2 well, Main and Oak's probably in the neighborhood about 250, Beacon Street East and Church, depending upon what we want to do in regards to the parking lot support to that, could be 150 to 200.
Okay.
Road improvements for this construction year, you can see here, Appleton and Old North Main Street, the bond portion, the reconstruction at the north end of the ones we're in design right now. Next year, this is tentative, although we're starting to relook at in regards to Union Ave. That in alone, going from Guilford to Messer, that's the one that we basically rebuilt in 2014. And if you look at the time frame of what pavement recommendations is for that type of road, someplace between 12 years and 15 years in that window, you need to mill it and put a new wearing surface on it to protect what you've invested in the binder and everything below it. So that's what this was programmed for. Probably now, it's going to be pushed out a couple of years just because it's about 1.2 million, but again, the cost will escalate as we go on. Okay, internal service fund, we have to make the prediction back in November for December turn-in. So it's always, okay, what does the Energy Information Agency think the average is going to be for the upcoming calendar year? Because they do it by calendar year. So that budget lines that you see was based off of what they said in November. So they were figuring an average of $4.15 a gallon for diesel and $3.40 for gas, and you'll see later on what it's really turning out to be. Really, on the short-term plan, we're doing focused training on our mechanics because of all the new systems that are coming out to make sure they're up to date on what is happening in the career field. The challenges were all the people who do that training are still coming out of COVID, and there's not as much training as there was pre-COVID, but we're looking for it. And then we still need to keep working on, between Finance and Public Works, and updating the internal service fund procedures. Okay, so you can see the data for EIA is what was in their May 7th prediction. So for 2024, they're thinking diesel's gonna average about $4 a gallon for this year and about $3.50. Now remember, that includes all the taxes and such. We don't pay the taxes, but we do pay the fees associated with it because it goes back into the program that pays for if we have when the gas stations have a diesel leak or whatever underground, that's where the money goes to help defray those costs. On May 29th, when I checked the pumps in the area, it was $3.89 for diesel and $3.53 for gasoline. And then you can see what they're predicting for 2025. They're still talking in regards to, at the federal level, another big emission standard in 2027. Not as familiar with the cars and light truck side of it, what the impact fiscally, but from previous years and previous jobs, typically it's about a $10,000 to $15,000 increase on the heavy-duty trucks just associated with the new emission standards. You still have a year wait from the time you order a vehicle, like an F-150 or whatever, to the time it comes. They are getting better, having more stock than the lot, but then it depends upon what is available, with options and what colors you want. And we're kind of sort of we want the truck. We don't really care about the color at this point. And construction equipment still seems to be holding at about the 1 year point from the time you order, unless they happen to have a display model. Okay, sanitary sewer fund, Winnipesaukee River Basin in fiscal year 2024, They were 69% of our budget. So most of our funding goes to the Winnipesaukee River Basin. It's a biennium budget development year this year for them. So they have to turn in their budget in September. They have promised us that sometime in August we'll get a first read of what they're submitting. They're anticipating right now a 12 to 15% increase. That's kind of sort of what we already had planned when we came and got the approvals for the long-range budget increases for the sanitary sewer fund, but it doesn't necessarily include all the priority needs, which is, in our language, is the deferred maintenance. So we'll have to watch that to see what they do. Just a reminder, most of the rate system was established in the 1980s. Operations and maintenance was updated in June a couple of years ago, and the replacement fund was updated in August in the same year. Okay, so we are now in the last year of the conversion from this old system to the new one. So at the end of that, we dropped from being 49.87% of the system to 43.31%. And we have started already collecting the data to do the new update based off of what flow is. So the review will be underway for beginning on the July 1st of 2025. Okay, excuse me, for the July 1st, 2025. Then in looking at the system and looking at the data that we've seen, we probably are overpaying by about $250,000 in that range due to some issues between us and Guilford. We believe their share that they're sending to our Blackbrook pump station on Union Ave is higher, which means they should be paying more of the electrical costs associated with it. And then the other one is Guilford Ave is one of their major avenues of flow coming into the city, and we found that there's been some issues with the Winnipesaukee River Basin's metering system, so we're doing some checks on that to see if that's gonna improve it from the standpoint of what we owe the basin. Okay, so update on really the private road and the EPA permit system, private sewer system. This is the year they had to put a new permit out for us, and it becomes effective in July 1 of this year. One of the new requirements to us is in 48 months, we have to have a climate adaptation plan done and submitted to EPA. And when they say implemented, that's really what timeframe we're talking about for the various changes that we need to do to make our sewer system not susceptible to climate change. And for the most part, you know, if you're not in the floodplain, you're really, what you're focusing on that point is how much I&I are you getting into your system. And that's the inflow and infiltration that leaks into the pipes. Okay, on the private collection side of the house, we asked some specific questions as a system, and we got some answers back that were interesting this time, in writing from EPA. So we are not, the city is not responsible for the O&M of non-municipal sewer systems, or private sewer systems. In other words, we don't have to ensure that they're doing everything to the EPA standard. We are responsible for ensuring that the non-municipal system doesn't cause us to have a sanitary sewer overflow, okay? And they said basically we should have a sewer ordinance that makes sure that's gonna happen. If the private sewer system has a sanitary sewer overflow that gets into a catch basin or into the waters of the US, they are subject to fines from Department of Environmental Services, the New Hampshire, and from EPA. So it's in their best interest to make sure they're doing what they need to do to keep them off their back. But there is no requirement for them to meet all the standards that we have. There's some things that we probably should do as part of the update the sewer use ordinance. Like, and the best example I can, best example I can give you is the water system. You know, when the power goes out, they're all on generators, okay? So all the houses can get water. But if you're private and you have your own private pump station and you don't have backup for it, you got water going in and it's coming to the pump station, but it's got no place to go, so you'll have an overflow. So some things like that is the things that we'll have to ensure that, you know, is in our sewer use ordinance, so they're doing the right things for design and such.
Do you know which private sewer systems do not have generator backup
We have started through that process. When you talk about Southdown Long Bay, most of that's gravity going down. Most of the ones that we're looking at are the ones that are on hillsides, where they're on the wrong side of the hill. The ones up on Endicott Street East. And those are the ones that we're going through.
Okay. And so how do we address that?
Well, we could either address it from being in the sewer use ordinance to require them to have it, or we could address it and say, you know, if you have a sanitary sewer overflow from that and it goes to these places, EPA and DES is gonna be on your back, and it better not allow it to happen so you're not fined.
And they're hefty fines.
Yes.
Okay.
But if I might, I think fixing the ordinance would be the best way to go.
Yeah.
Because
Yeah.
people don't, I mean, by the time the damage is done,
Yep.
the fines and whatever are sort of also rans. I
Right.
mean, they're expensive, but
Yep.
we want to prevent that, and the way to do that is to require them to have power.
Yep.
Which is not an outrageous
No.
requirement.
No, and, but it's probably pretty good stewardship of our soil and our waters, quite frankly, to do that, and
So-
requiring them to do something, because that, as we see, I mean, there are definitely some climate struggles that go on here, and they're becoming more challenging, so. anyway.
If I could, I would ask that the director perhaps give us some proposed language.
And we're working on that already for it. It's, our sewer ordinance dates back to 1975, so it's got a lot of changes to it.
I'm sure.
It's basically eliminate this, put this whole new one in.
Yeah, to replace all. Thank you, Counselor Cheney, I think you're right. So thank you, Director, for starting the work on that and hopefully getting it to us.
Sooner rather than later. Yeah, thanks.
Okay, again, sanitary sewer fund, it's mainly ratepayer funded, and the benefit of not having to meet the EPA standard for all the private systems, that enables us not necessarily to have any subsidy from the taxpayers. Let's see, so we got $3 million in bonds that was already approved for fiscal year 24, 25, 26. And as always, we look at the Clean Water State Revolving Loan Fund, which is 10% principal forgiveness. We are a little bit different from the police and fire. All of our federal programs tend to be loans, water and sewer. There are some grants, but usually they're coming not from the water and sewer side of the house unless this is a specific thing they're trying to do, i.e. All the issue with lead pipes. That has generated grants, whereas just the normal day-to-day maintaining it hasn't. So there's that portion of it. And then just talking big picture from the standpoint of, I'll say, road projects, that is all, you know, through the DOT 10-year plan. You can compete at the federal level for high dollar value projects, but those are ones where you talk about a grant writer, we're gonna have to get somebody to write it, because you may be 10,000 cities competing against a very low dollar value money, so it's gotta be a good package. And probably the best example I can give you is how long it took Concord to get their Main Street through it. It was so many different iterations of different times trying to get the grant and tweaking it to be able to get that money. Okay, let's see, what else? Okay, so projects we're looking at is pump station upgrades to Hillcrest. Mainly, we're having issues with the pumps there not being sized right to be able to handle the flow. It's working, but it's one that could cause us problems on a moment's notice at any point. Briarcrest force main replacement, and then we're working with the Lady of the Lakes developer for possible private-public partnership to get them city sewer by going through Paugus Woods. So we'll see how that goes. Sanitary sewers, we already talked. We'll get that portion going. All right, so that's the end of the presentation. And being the combat engineer that I am for 25 years, I always have to have something in here that talks passed, that's 2,000 pounds of composite C4 and a fire hose going off that we use to clear a minefield so we can go through. Subject to your questions?
What's the blast radius for something like that?
Let me tell you, I got too close during Desert Storm. The Humvee I was in lifted up off the ground. You can be close to it, but you've got to be sealed up in a armored personnel carrier, a tank or something, so that it's not directly impacting you. I wasn't feeling too good for a couple days after that. One went off.
I can understand why.
Uh-huh.
Marine Corps didn't have many armored personnel carriers.
Any other
Did it by
questions?
running.
Well, I don't have any other questions. I'll look to counselors.
Just one, and I know it's a wash. I don't understand. I have two. But the first part is, why is fuel in the internal service?
I have been at, this is my third community with, actually fourth with an internal service fund and how they handle fuel, and it varied two different ways. In some cases, it was because they wanted the departments to conserve, they put it in the department's budget. And other times, it was in the internal service fund. So it really depends upon what the philosophy is and how you want to control it.
I would just like it so we know what a department's using. Now, when you,
We actually have 4 separate accounts that my office manages, big picture wise. One for fire, police, parks, and public works. So we can tell you what each one's spending by going through the finance records from that standpoint. And we have limited search capability in the online software, but it only goes back so far.
fair enough. Mayor, if I might, just, and this is probably a Glenn Smith question. Under expenses in internal services, there's depreciation, and then there's capitalization of expense. I'm not an accountant, but when I looked up capitalization expense, Wikipedia said there's no such terminology.
Well, Wikipedia needs to know a few accounting tricks.
Okay, that's why I'm asking.
So what happens is that you see the expenses for the new vehicles, police cruisers and such. At some point when we capitalize those, we take those expenses and move them into the asset category. But when we do that, then the expenses go away from the accounting system, so that it looks like we're spending, as you can look, if you look at the 2021 column on page 110, where it looks like we spent nothing on police cruisers. Well, that's exactly what happened there. So what happens, so what we do is that when we move those expenses into the assets, we hit that capitalization account so that it all nets out to zero in the expense side. But historically, you can still look back and see how much you spent on these vehicles.
Okay. Fair enough, not an accountant.
Mr. Mayor, in fairness to Councilman Bokert, I feel compelled to ask you about the floor in the garage and its condition and what we're gonna do.
Basically, if you wanted to fix the current building I'm in, you're talking over $1 million. It's not worth it. If, just say we back off a little bit, and we can start firing up hard the piece to get a new building. But really part of that's gonna be is, where do we want to target?
Yep.
And the best place from an operational standpoint is you want to be at a road intersection that can get you in multiple places in the city. So looking at it, we need to be someplace in the neighborhood of Meredith Center Road, Parade, and Elm. Because that way, once, during a snowstorm, you can hit it and they can split to all sectors of the city. The only other land that we own right now that's large enough, of course, it has the landfill underneath it. And then the rest of the acreage is actually in Guilford, because at some point that was going to be a joint landfill.
Yep.
So you can't put a building that's designed to be occupied on top of a landfill. So if we wanted to put it there, and it's not a great location, because everyone's got to go north to go where they need to go, then you have to take all the material that's in there and you got to move it. So we're talking someplace where we currently don't own land, and it should be someplace with a good intersection. And that is someplace around Meredith Center and Parade.
Is there any possible fix, just to get us by? Because I understand it's pretty significant.
The problem comes in is that was built like it's a slab on grade.
Yep.
With pieces on it. So the ground underneath it was supposed to support that slab. The problem, what they did is they built on top of a swamp, and we have 7 feet of peat underneath it. So the more pressure you put on it, the more peat compresses and it goes away. So we have a gap in places that's like 12 inches between the bottom of the floor and the top of the ground, because it just keeps settling on us. So to be able to hold the floor where it is, even temporary, you're gonna have to put something in that acts like a pile to be able to support the floor on it, which means you're either gonna have to take the roof off to be able to get into it, or you're gonna have to take a side off if you can find some sort of helical pile where you can come in and come down. And that's just to buy you time.
It was my understanding there are some places where the floor actually
Yep.
slams in. Is there any way we can throw something in there to,
You'd have to cut the floor out,
okay.
and then you'd have to build it like it's a bridge. So you'd have to build it like Messer Street or Church Street, so the ground underneath it doesn't need a floor, but then the structural engineers will have to determine what you gotta put in to carry the load.
The other request I had, if I might, Mr. Mayor, the other departments have provided us with comparative figures for surrounding towns and similar sized cities. Is there any chance you could do that, or have someone on your staff collect that for us, forward to us?
Part of the issue that we've had is everybody calls different things different.
Yep.
And trying to match them, it would be either me or Lindsay going down and looking at actual job descriptions versus titles to figure out how to match.
I just think it would help with,
Somewhere in there, Director, it sounds like, yes, we'd be happy to do that, Counselor.
Yes.
It may
Just don't
take,
expect
it may
it
take
fast.
45 days to get you the report you're
Report.
looking for.
Or, yep,
Please and thank you.
yep,
thank you, Mr. Mayor, I'm all set.
Thank you, Wes.
okay.
Thank you for your service as well.
Thank you, Wes.
So, slideshow, there it is, there it is. Where did it go? There we go, okay. Almost out of here.
Would the council like 5 minutes to stretch their legs, get a refreshment before we have the, this is pretty dense material we're taking in. If you'd like it, I'm happy to
All right.
recess for 5 minutes.
I lost the.
I might go downstairs.
this evening. We are a little bit behind schedule, but glad you hung in there with us.
Well, thank you for having me, and hope you're not disappointed, but there's not too many slides on mine, so.
New one?
There is a new copy coming around for each of you. I just made a couple changes.
Thank you very much.
Thank you, Glenn.
You're already throwing it out? Oh, gotcha. I see.
Sorry, that's on
I think I have you.
24 calls already today.
Busy day.
It's been a busy
you.
day, yes. Busy day. Yeah, I mean, they had 11 by noontime.
Wow.
Yeah. Thank you, Glenn.
You're welcome.
Well, thank you very much for having me tonight. I'm just here to present some of the updates to the 24-25 budget that I presented. The first thing I want to talk about is a little bit about the department and how it's organized and how it runs. And I don't know, can you see that on the screen? I don't know.
It is on there.
Okay, perfect. I know it's kind of
Tough to
small.
see, but it's easier on
Yeah,
us.
it's kind of small, but, you know, we have a chain of command in the fire department, just like the police department or the military, and it flows downhill. So you can see that, you know, I have the city manager above me, then below me I have an assistant chief, and then between us is the real boss, that's the office manager, that's Mary Ellen. And then I have two deputy chiefs. I have an EMS deputy chief and a fire protection deputy chief. Since I've been the chief of the Laconia Fire Department, good, bad, or indifferent, I have had vacancies in both of those positions, and I've had the chance to fill those positions. And I'm really excited about the people that we have in those positions. They are outstanding people, great character, great talent, and they're going to be the future leaders of the Laconia Fire Department in the near future. Then we have a platoon system. So when the firefighters come to work, they come to work at 7 o'clock in the morning, and if they're lucky, they get to go home at 7 o'clock in the morning. We have a platoon at Weirs and a platoon at Central. So on shift, on the floor, responding to calls, we have 10 certified personnel that are cross-trained with fire and EMS. Each station has an officer. And so at the Weirs, we have an officer with 2 firefighters, and at Central, we have an officer with 6 firefighters cross-trained in EMS. There's a station captain assigned. They're also on one of those shifts. They're just responsible for the station itself. So that's kind of how the makeup works. So I just wanted you to be aware of that. So we've had a lot of success and progress over the last year, and I'm pretty pumped about that, and really appreciative for everything that the city's done for us as an organization. Since January 2023, we've been able to maintain staffing at 10 people per day. That's huge. The incidents that we deal with are very complex and very diverse, and to have the right amount of people makes a difference. And that's what our job is to make a positive difference for the residents and visitors of Laconia, excuse me. So we were able to get some new vehicles recently, a new forestry, a utility vehicle, a command vehicle, and on order, we have an engine right now that is being built, and 2 ambulances. So just amazing. And just some pictures of the vehicles that we've purchased over the last year and a half. And I know, like Wes talked about, there's been delays in some of them, and some of these were attempted to be purchased when the city manager was fire chief, and just was very difficult to come by.
Who drives the Chevy SUV?
That is my fire prevention deputy chief.
Nice vehicle.
It is a very nice vehicle. People make fun of me because I have the oldest one, but I call it a classic. So I just really want to talk to you about our service philosophy, right? I mentioned earlier that our job is to make a difference, right? A positive difference, do everything we can to make that difference. And we can accomplish that by doing your best, doing what's right, treat people the way that you want to be treated, and always ask yourself what is in the best interest of the people we serve. And I can honestly say that each and every individual that works for us lives by that. And it's amazing. The men and women of the Laconia Fire Department are just amazing. I know Councilor Haynes was talking about culture and wanting people to come to work here, and that's exactly what we're trying to accomplish at the Laconia Fire Department. So just some call data, just 4-year average of incidents, a little over 4,600 calls. You can see that 2021 was that big spike, and kind of stabilized now. We have a lot of, we call them high-end users on the EMS side. Those do take up a lot of calls. Some of those have moved on to other areas. That has made a difference in the call volume. So I just touched upon some lines that we've had increases in. I worked really closely with the city manager on the budget this year, so it was a great process. Training is huge, it's paramount for us. We want to make sure that we're prepared to do the job at all times. We don't want anyone to be in a situation when they don't know what to do. So just some of the classes that we've been certified in this year, or that we certified Laconia Fire Department personnel in: swift water rescue, boat operations, hazardous materials, driver operator, some leadership classes, ice rescue, instructor, and company officer. And the greatest thing about the fire department is you never know what the next call is going to bring, so we try to make sure that we're prepared at all times. Another line increase is just maintenance of equipment. Unfortunately, if it says fire department, it's always very expensive. And some of this equipment, the warranties are running out, so we're gonna start incurring some costs. So that's why there was increase to this line. So your SCBA's, your extrication tools, things of that nature. Physical exams, this is a big one in the fire service right now. Cancer is, it's there, it's alive, and it's increasing. And as an organization, as a city, we need to make sure that we protect our people and make sure that we get them properly evaluated on a regular basis. So this increase is the start of a process that we hope to finalize here in the next couple of years, which will result in every single member of the Laconia Fire Department getting full body scans on an annual basis. Early detection is key, and we want to make sure they have that opportunity. So we belong to what's called the Lakes Region Mutual Fire Aid Association. It's an unbelievable organization. The benefits that we get from this organization, not only from dispatching, but through training, education, and involvement is unbelievable. So recently there was a change in the way that they fund Lakes Region Mutual Fire Aid, and they added a component based on volume. And of course, we do more calls than anybody else in the Lakes region. So that is why that increase is there, and probably rightfully so. In my opinion, I still think it's an outstanding deal and a great bang for the buck.
Sure.
Yes.
Is it volume going out or volume coming in? In other words, is it more times, is your department spending more time covering outside the city, or is it more time people coming into the city to cover your department?
Total call volume.
Total call
Yeah,
volume.
total call volume. So you have a department like Hill, New Hampshire, versus Laconia, New Hampshire. Just, it's not really apples to apples. And then I just have some basic line increases, just because things get more expensive every year. So lights, power, heating, fuel, water, sewer, supplies, and repairs. Grants, we try. We were able to get an assistant to firefighters grant last year. We were able to replace all of our technical rope rescue training equipment. I'm 50-50 right now. I applied for a position in fire prevention last year, which I was unsuccessful. And this coming year, I applied for replacement of our portable radios for, I think it was $126,000. And I probably should talk to Chief Canfield and see if I can talk to his grant writer about some of these things. And I do now, I have to up my social media game too. I'm not good with it.
I have a question about status of your paramedicine program, which I think is sort of very exciting.
Yes, so I've talked to the city manager about it, and obviously the housing task force. So one of the things that we're trying to institute at the Laconia Fire Department is called Mobile Integrated Health Program, which is pretty much community paramedicine. The most expensive thing is an ambulance ride to the emergency room. And, we can provide a service to potentially avoid that and get people proper care so it's not needed, so 911's not needed. It's pretty popular in other parts of the country, but pretty much what it would be is we would have a paramedic that has the ability to do a lot of things that they can do in the emergency room, at walk-in clinics, at these individuals' homes, and be a part of a system that includes VNA, social services, and it's another component to that. So they can do welfare checks, blood pressures, vitals, medicine checks. They can treat wounds. It's made an impact in other parts. Hanover has it right now. They work with Dartmouth. So one of the things that I am working on is partnering with the Publishers for Partner Health and funding this through a grant, and it'd be a 3-year grant. So we're really, really excited about that, and I think it can make a difference and impact positively in the community.
I'm so glad you're pursuing that. I'm partial to the program because it just makes sense, taking some level of healthcare to people where you find them, which is in their homes or out among the community, all the places that you serve. The idea of a little bit of healthcare which prevents the emergency room visit for things that, can be addressed if you have contact with people on the street or in their homes, right? Just whether it's medication, whether it's wound care, whether it's just a mental health, the impact, not that you're a mental health professional, but just having a conversation with someone can raise someone's spirits and have an impact on their mental health, therefore reducing the likelihood, we hope, of people going to the ED for their primary care check-ins.
Yeah, perfect example today is we had someone that was really, really sick with an infection, like really, really sick, and just hadn't been attended to, and kind of dropped through the cracks of the system. And that's a perfect example of where we could have made a difference for that individual.
Sure, then they take the most expensive ride to the hospital for the most expensive care. As Councilor Lippman used to say when he sat here, the right care at the right time at the right place.
Right, and on the flip side, like, we can find that person that really needs to get to the emergency room and make sure they get there, even though they want to avoid it at all costs.
So, thank you. for
Thank
that.
you. So future concerns. First of all, I just want to say thank you to the council and the city for working really, really hard on recruitment and retention. And obviously the big part of that is wages and salaries. And I know that I've worked closely with the city manager, and it means a lot to me. It means a lot to our organization, and we're definitely getting there. But I do agree there's got to be more than just the money aspect of it. People want to come here. They want to work there. And I just want to let you know that we've changed since I've been here, the way that we try to attract people. We just conducted interviews, and we didn't ask one single firefighter or EMS question. It's all about the person. It's all about the character. It's all about the fit. We're making investments in people, and hopefully they make an investment in us, and that's what we're really trying to focus on. The reason being is because it's changed so much. When I started, when the city manager started, there was only 3 or 4 departments in the Lakes region that had career staff. Every department in the Lakes region has career staff now. There's so many jobs out there, it's not even funny. So that investment is huge, that culture is huge. So now we're hiring people, not only Laconia Fire Department, but everybody. We're hiring people that don't have those prerequisite trainings that you need. So we used to have a minimum of firefighter 2, what's called AEMT, and your CDL. That's impossible these days. Even the big cities struggle with this. So we're really trying to make an investment in that person. What we're finding now is that we're going to have to put these people through that training, almost similar to the police department in the police academy. And so I can't emphasize enough that we really want to focus on that right person, because if we can get that right person and put them through the training, they're going to stay and they're going to make that commitment to us. And the goal is not to have to do this unless somebody retires. So that's something that we're really working on. There is a cost associated with it. Before they all had that training when they came to us. Now they don't. We have to get them up to that level. So I just wanted to kind of bring that to your attention. Just a couple other things that I'd like to talk to you about that aren't on this presentation is today we recently had one of our members get certified as a paramedic. So that was really, really fun, and it's going to be a great asset to us. And I know I sent the city manager a little letter about some sort of qualification that we got, but the city is now certified in rapid sequence intubation, RSI. For those of you who are not familiar with that, it's a game changer. You know, last year during Motorcycle Week, we had 3 motorcycle accidents where if we had that, it could have made a big difference for people. And now they have the ability to pretty much intubate any patient at any time, just like they do in the hospital. When they paralyze that individual to maintain that airway, we can do that in the field now. So instead of waiting for a helicopter to come or taking that risk on going down to Concord or going to Laconia, we can do that right there in the field, which is pretty significant. There are minimal departments in the state that have this, and we have 6 people in Laconia that are certified in RSI.
That's remarkable. Congratulations.
That's 20 years in the making, trying to get that to happen. So, no, I mean, we've been. so-
And that's the result of
You know,
the
kudos.
certificate. And so does that a separate issue than the paramedic being certified today?
Yes, it's totally different.
Totally different?
Yes.
Okay, well, that,
It's like super advanced paramedicine, let's put it
Yeah.
that way.
congratulations.
Thank you.
Thank you very much. You know, this is no knock on the previous chief, but,
What's his name?
yeah, no, but
To be here.
I think that previous chief would probably agree, you know, change is good, right? If, change is good to the extent you bring in a fresh set of eyes, fresh perspective, and you can build on what has been building there and the strong foundation of the fire department and bring in a new chief. And I think we've been very fortunate to find you and be able to hire you and have you on board. I appreciate the work that you do throughout the community and working on the housing task force with me, going on field trips around the city and checking out places and seeing some of the challenges that you have. I just I really appreciate that, and I think we have, much like our police department, I think our fire department is really a source of pride in this city. So thank you to you and the men and women in the fire service, the Laconia Fire Department.
Thank you very much. I really appreciate that. It means a lot.
I'll look to my fellow counselors here to speak or ask questions.
Thank you, Chief.
Okay, thank you, Chief. Excellent. Look forward to working with you.
Thank you very much.
Okay.
Thank you.
On our budget, we had agenda item number 6D, which is budget amendment grant anticipation note.
Yes, thank you, Mr. Mayor. This is something we're going to talk about in more detail when we do the finance budget presentation next week. But because this wasn't in the printed document and because the public hearing is also next week, I just want to put it out on the table and for the public before the night of the public hearing. And what this is a something we've been working on with our attorney and with the airport department concerning short-term funding for a project that they want to do to repurpose a runway into a taxiway that will open up the opportunity for more hangars and rental space at the airport. Now, the situation with that is that the airport is not allowed to borrow money as per the charter of the airport. So they turn to the city to us to borrow on their behalf, and we've been working through the various ways of dealing with that, whether that be through a bond or for a grant, and of course the bond is a problem because it's a separate legal entity. So we're settling on doing what is probably going to be called a grant anticipation note, which we're borrowing in anticipation of future grants. The airport has grants lined up through the FAA and through the state, such that they can pay this back within about a 4 to 5 year window. So we'll be, like I say, we'll be going more about this and going into more detail, and I'm sure Marv might be here next week to kind of talk about it from the airport perspective. But just so it's not sprung on you the night of the public hearing, just wanted to put it out there for this right now.
How much are we talking?
It's about $2.3 million.
So this is, as Glenn alluded to, this is what's called the Crosswinds development, which is an abandoned runway, which will now become a taxiway. One of the greatest source of revenue for the airport is the land lease for the hangars. The airport always owns the land. They lease the land for fixed periods, sometimes 20 years, 20 to 40 years. The hangars are leased, and So what we're doing now, and been in discussion for quite some time, is to carve out an additional 9 parcels of land at the airport and lease it. We went out to a request for proposals for those parcels. If I'm not mistaken, all 9 parcels right now are spoken for with what's determined to be quality proposals at the fixed rate that we anticipated to build rather significant structures on the land and then to continue to generate revenue for, I think it's either 20 or 40 years, so it's pretty significant. The airport builds the infrastructure, right? The lessee builds the structure and leases the structure based on the square footage of the structure they built.
Is there taxes on those structures once they're built?
I don't think so.
Okay.
I don't know for sure, but no, because you're taxing,
It's sitting on a city's property.
it's actually sitting on Guilford's property, even though Laconia manages it. No, there's no property tax on that I know of, because it's owned by the airport authority. Yes, but it's a significant source of income going forward for the airport.
Mayor,
Oh, yes,
this probably has nothing to, has the volume of larger airplanes increased?
Yes, and there's been, it's had to do with some investments made, it's going all the way back to ERA funding, which took us out to almost 6,000 feet of runway space. So larger jets could top off their fuel and fly coast to coast. So that was a significant, that gave it that ability. Also, the fractional ownership and chartering has become more popular. And as the increase in popularity of the lakes around here and the mountains, that has really become the closest airport for people coming in for more expensive homes. Can fly in there, and it has the ILS runway, so it's an instrument landing. You can come in foul weather. We invested in de-icing equipment there, so FlexJet, Wheels Up, organizations like that do not want to fly into an airport in inclement weather and be forced to remain overnight, so we need more hangar space for them, one, but they also won't come into an airport if they can't de-ice. So we've increased the de-icing capabilities of airplanes as well as the de-icing of the runways, so they can come in, drop passengers off, and get out right away, or if they do have to stay, they're now going to have the hangar space that they want to, and they're going to have the opportunity, if necessary, to de-ice before they say leave the next morning or later on in the day.
I just asked because for some reason I think we're in the flight pattern where we are on top of the hill and we see these great big things and they're not little airplanes anymore.
No, they're not, and one thing we've done there too to sort of make it, I think it's a far superior airport than Concord, quite frankly. Even though Concord's in the city, we have better taxiways, better runways, we're in better shape. We also generate a lot of money from fuel sales there. So we are right in the middle as far as the price of our fuel at the airport. The airport authority receives money on per gallon of Jet A fuel sold. So Jet A going to the more corporate type aircraft that are coming in there, and not the recreational flyer who's using a different type of fuel, so they're not overly taxed. Nonetheless, it's a really great asset that continues to be nurtured, I think appropriately so.
What's next?
What's next? Out there? We've done a lot of obstruction removal up along, so that was a pretty significant investment. At the end of the bypass, we've moved out, took out a lot of those trees up towards, what's the street that's?
Hillcrest.
Hillcrest,
and all
right.
that area.
Some of that. So, I think that's it. I don't think there's, we were able to use ARPA funding to replace a 30-year-old HVAC system, which is done. And secondly, we put in a generator. So we actually did have the ability, and right, if no loss of power, the airport can remain open. So some significant investments were done there.
You mentioned Concord, and I remember reading in this weekend's newspaper, they're gonna tear down the terminal in Concord and build a new one, the city is going to.
We don't have to do that. They did a significant upgrade years ago. It's a very nice, it's a really, really nice municipal airport over there. It's
Well, I
just-
noticed the old Kitchen Cravings, that hasn't been opened yet again.
Yeah, that hasn't. They are up to date on their rent. Right, so they're paying their rent as agreed. The issue that we're having is that they may be in breach of the lease agreement if they don't maintain the exterior of the property. Anyway, we had it, they had their property sold to someone else who wanted to go in there and open a restaurant. That fell through. It had nothing to do with the airport authority. In fact, we made it easier because we combined some lot lines over there for another parcel that was landlocked. But, yeah, that's an asset that the airport really could use because it's, the recreational flyers like to come in and have meals.
Yep.
And we put a gate there so you could park your plane and walk through the gate, go to Kitchen Cravings. But we're in sort of a tough situation with these folks now.
Can you tell me how long the main runway is?
About 5,900 feet.
Just under a mile.
Yeah, it's about a mile. Yeah, it's significant.
Yeah.
Yep.
Yeah, Mark,
So-
they go
I've gone in
right
there a
over
couple of
my
times.
house.
No-
Right
No
over my
problem
house.
whatsoever, I like it.
Never had any
We
problems.
used to have a
It's great.
commuter,
Years ago,
airline out
John
of there.
Gothier.
Yellow Jet.
Well, no, but, no,
I remember seeing Yellow Jet go through there.
Oh, I've never seen that.
and Delta for a while had a small jet flying out of there.
Yeah, so, I don't know if that will ever change, I'm not sure, but,
Yeah, it would be nice if it did,
yeah.
as opposed to driving to Boston.
Yeah, no, yeah, so you're right, Counselor Haynes, there's been seems to be an uptick in activity over the
Oh, yeah.
years, and popularity of these fractional ownership and
Yep.
charters are
They go over
significant,
my house every day, all the time.
yes.
They go directly over my house.
So, with that being said, thank you, Mr. Smith. We are at 8:05. I'd like to adjourn the City Council budget meeting of June 3rd, 2024.